what we think is important political forum featuring the candidates for mayor for the city of Atlanta. This may be the most important meeting that we have all year, because today you're going to have an opportunity to ask all the questions that you want to about our city. You're going to be able to listen to the candidates and their response, and hopefully on November the 4th, you're going to be able to go to the ballot box, select the right candidate that will guide and direct our city into the next century. We're going to, I'm going to dispense this morning with the bios on each of our candidates. I think you know Mayor Campbell and Marvin Arrington. We have got a copy of their bio, which I will pass out during the meeting. I'm also going to pass out some 3x5 cards so you can write down your questions, and then I'll pass those on to Will Stout, who will be moderating the discussion this morning. As I said, we are very pleased and we're very honored to have Mayor Bill Campbell and Marvin Arrington, President of our Atlanta City Council. We appreciate them taking their time out of a busy schedule and out of the heat of the campaign as it gets closer to November the 4th. And we feel like that by them both being here today, it certainly shows their interest in not only our board organization, but in our real estate industry and the impact and importance that it has on the city of Atlanta. So we thank you for both being here. We've asked each candidate to address certain issues. We would like them to address their vision for the future of Atlanta as we move into the next millennium. We've asked them to share their thoughts and their ideas, their priorities, and their mission for the next 4 years. And obviously we've asked them to discuss those issues, the major issues that are facing our city today. Stout, who will kind of discuss the format for today, and we'll take it from there.
Thanks, Lewis. It's nice to see all my friends and my competitors and my friendly competitors in the audience this morning. And it's also nice to have two gentlemen with us who have such distinguished curricula vitae that we know who they are without being told who they are. And Mays, which go over their academic and public life achievements. And these guys have both been the real road warriors. These aren't the cowards that said, we'll let the other guy do it. These are the guys that, and I can assure you it will be an exciting 15 minutes. In an effort to try to make it, to bring some modicum of fairness as to who goes first, I'm going to ask Dave. Linda, I have a quarter here someplace. I think I have a quarter here because Lewis gave me a quarter this morning.
Here's
Jesus, I got 2 quarters this morning. Gentlemen, Marvin, why don't we ask you to call this, and why don't we ask her to flip it? Go ahead. And it is tails. Do you prefer to speak first or second, sir?
I do. I prefer to speak second.
Second. Mr. Mayor, it looks like you have the format for 15 minutes. Thank you.
Like with the Super Bowl. It's a pleasure to be here and to address this group and to talk about the challenges that we've faced and successes that we've had and the vision for the future of this great city. You know, this is an incredible time for Atlanta. We have used the last 10 years of our city to prepare for the Centennial Olympic Games. We have used the Olympic Games as a catalyst to transform the physical landscape of our city. Now the challenge is, where do we go in the future? What do we do to make our city ready for the tremendous challenges in employment and housing and technology that we'll face as we go into the new millennium? Well, first, as any incumbent would want to do, let me tell you where we are today and where we were when I took office, because I think that always provides a proper format for examining the record of an incumbent. In fact, Ronald Reagan said it best when he was in a debate a number of years ago. Is Atlanta better off today than it was 4 years ago? Of course, he wasn't talking about Atlanta when he was debating, he was talking about America, but the analogy is still the same. And so let me run through what I consider to be the fundamental issues that face our great city. First and foremost, as realtors and as those who love and live in this city and who work in our city, the number one issue then and now is the issue of crime and public safety. On that issue, we have an outstanding record, and I want to tell you about where we were and where we are today. Now, as people who follow the news and who are very sensitive to news items and negative publicity about our city, you will remember that in 1994, when I took office, and a few years before that, routinely there was one glaring headline each year that Atlanta did not welcome, and one title that we did not welcome, and that was Atlanta, the most violent city in this country, or Atlanta, the murder capital of this country. You may remember those days. Luckily, you have forgotten those days because you don't see that headline anymore, because we have pushed the violent crime rate down by almost 17% over the last 3.5 years. Now, clearly, we're not pleased with having crime in our city. We're not satisfied with where we are. We still got a long ways to travel. But undeniably, Atlanta is a safer city than it was 4 years ago. Now, let's look at where we were and where we are. Last year, in 1996, we had the lowest number of burglaries since 1970, the lowest number of rapes since 1973. Juvenile crime was down in every category, down by almost 12%. We put more police on the streets of Atlanta this year than they have in the last 25 years. There are 250 new officers that we're putting on the streets of Atlanta, 7 recruiting classes, the largest number ever. We have a pool of applicants of 800 people that are waiting to get into our police academy. And that happens because of our commitment to public safety. It is first and foremost our community policing that we believe has worked. Now, understand that we're not satisfied with where we are, but I will tell you that by any standard, when you have reduced the violent crime rate by 17%, and this year, in the first 6 months of 1998, 1997, we have reduced the overall crime rate by over 20%. 5,000 fewer crimes than the same time last year. And last year was lower than the year before, lower than the year before. So we have made progress. We have opened up more mini police precincts in the history of Atlanta, 5. We've opened up large precincts in areas of the city, in Kirkwood and in Bankhead. We also just opened up a new mini police precinct in Buckhead, or we're getting ready to, in the public shopping center. But it's more than that. It's a collaborative. It's also our bicycle patrols. When I was running for office 4 years ago, I talked about bicycle patrols, and people laughed. And, they thought it was an amusing concept, sort of Barney Fife on a bike. And yet, it's proven that wherever you use bicycle patrols, we have had an almost 25% reduction in crime. And so, when I took office, we began the process of increasing the number of bicycles in bicycle patrols. You may have seen a recent news release where we just purchased 50 bicycles for our bicycle patrol. Now, if you can believe that these bicycles cost about $1,000 a piece, it's a long way from the old Schwinn days, but nevertheless, that's what they cost. The thing that you want to know is that for these 50 bicycles, all of the purchases were paid for by drug seizure profits. And so we, in essence, are making the drug dealers pay for increased public safety in our city. In downtown Atlanta, the violent crime rate has dropped 34% over the last 3.5 years. We've seen significant reductions of crime in public housing. Everywhere you look, Atlanta is safer. But it's not just about putting more police on the streets. It's also about prevention. It's about making certain that our children have something constructive to do. And so from 1993 to today, we've increased the budget for the Parks and Recreation budget from $8 million to $11 million. We've increased the number of young people that we serve from 22,000 when I took office to 40,000 today. We've also opened up 2 new recreation facilities. And when we tore down the old stadium, which many of you may have been nostalgically committed to, when we tore that down, you may not know that the City of Atlanta residents and Fulton County residents have been paying for every year, except one, since 1966, $1.7 million a year in debt service for that facility. Even when the Braves drew 3 million people, we were still paying $1.7 million a year. That money came out of our Parks Improvement Fund. That's one of the reasons that I was so anxious to tear it down, in addition to the fact that we made promises to the neighborhoods of Summerhill, Peoplestown, and Mechanicsville. We're now using that $1.2 million. We just announced that we're building 2 new recreation facilities, 2 new state-of-the-art recreation facilities. And so it's not just about police on the streets, it's also about prevention. It's about giving our young people something constructive to do. New mentoring programs, new tutoring programs, working with the Boys and Girls Clubs. You may have heard of our Tickets for Kids program, which we initiated during this administration. We've given out 125,000 tickets to deserving young people in our city. We use it as an incentive, as a motivating tool for good behavior. And we think it's working. That's why the juvenile crime stats are down. Now, we also, while reducing the violent crime rate by 17%, and as I say, we're going to do even better in the future, we've also had a 70% reduction in complaints of police brutality. Now, the reason that I point that out is because there are a number of ways of policing. We believe that the way and the process that we embarked upon is going to get us where we want to go, making Atlanta a safer place, while not trampling on the rights of the people that live in our city. So, we've done some very fine things. Are we satisfied? Of course not. Do we still have a ways to go? Of course we do. Still too much crime. One of the things that I'm most proud of is our initiatives in domestic violence. When I was first elected, I was confronted with a statistic that said that more women are treated in emergency rooms for domestic violence each year in this country than for rapes, robberies, muggings, and automobile accidents combined. And so using that, I appointed a domestic violence task force. They brought back recommendations, and you would want to know that we've established a domestic violence court in our city. We have a new protocol for officers that are responding to domestic violence calls. We have a new victim witness assistance program, and we also have a no-drop policy in our solicitor's office that we've inaugurated, which means that an abusing spouse cannot become a loving spouse after a charge of domestic violence has been filed, and then not let the criminal justice and the social service system intervene and get the help that's so sorely needed. So when you look collaboratively at what we've been able to do, forming partnerships, making certain our city is safer, we believe that we have an outstanding record. Still, public safety is a journey, not a destination. But we're getting there, and we're getting there in the right way. And we believe that our goal and our vision for the future is to cut the violent crime rate by 50% over the next 4 years. And it's attainable. Our goal also is to make certain that we add more police. Our goal is 2,000 in 2000. Our police today are paid more than they ever have been paid in the past. We are closer to the national average for starting salaries than we ever have been. So I think when you look collaboratively at what we've done and where we're going, Atlanta is undeniably a safer place. Well, it's not always just about public safety. It's a host of other issues, so let me try to address those very briefly. If you would ask what accomplishment are we most proud of, it would be what we've done in housing, an issue that is near and dear to your heart. However, the issue that we have done the most in has been public housing. More than 20% of the population of Atlanta lives in subsidized housing. And when you look at the over 15,000 units of public housing in our city, when I took office, public housing in our city was a disgrace. We were close to having the federal government take over our public housing. And I think it was pretty routinely accepted that public housing was an absolute disaster. Poorly run, poorly managed, poorly maintained, with no hope for the people that lived there. Well, fast forward from then to today. And in fact, if you don't believe that the federal government was about to take over public housing, they took it over in Washington, D.C., they took it over in Chicago, they took it over in San Francisco, but not here. And it's because we brought new leadership into the housing authority. We made something that we put not only a new process, but that we also made certain that the people that live there were going to have to adhere to standards of conduct that you would accept anywhere else in our city. And so from then to now, what have we done? Well, I would ask you to do one thing, ride through Techwood Homes. If you've not been through Techwood Homes lately, you would be astounded. I could not have recommended that to you a few years ago. But today, Techwood Homes is not even called Techwood Homes any longer. It's called Centennial Place. It's an income of hope and a place where children are now walking on the streets and seniors are finally able to walk up and down Techwood Drive. It is a community that has been reborn. Look over at East Lake Meadows. East Lake Meadows, which was known as Little Vietnam. Today, East Lake is about to be reborn as the only place in America where the residents of public housing will live along the fairways of a golf course. Through our partnership with the Clinton Gore administration, there's a lot of units over 3.5 years. And if you want a basis for comparison, IRFA, the Urban Residential Finance Authority, has existed for 17 years. In its 17 years, it has financed 11,000 units. 4,000 or 3,700 of those units have been financed during the last 3.5 years. We have put new programs in place, our home ownership initiative with the Clinton administration, working with the Land Bank Authority. We're seeing rebirth in areas like Summer Hill. Some of you may have heard our radio commercials which talk about the rebirth of Summer Hill. If you don't know where Summer Hill is, it's around the Atlanta Stadium, where they had over 700 vacant lots. We're finally turning that community around. So we believe that wherever you look, in fact, the federal government reports that Atlanta had more increase in percentage of minority home ownership than any other city in the country last year. So we know that we're making progress. Are we where we want to be? Of course not. But we also, in the process of rebuilding, sometimes you have to tear down before you can rebuild. We had an inventory of almost 4,000 dilapidated structures that needed to be torn down when I took office. From then to today, we now have only about 1,000 left, and we will tear the rest of those down this year. In fact, it is a process of rebuilding because sometimes, as you know, we have an older population and many of the houses fall into disrepair when the owner dies. But we have begun this process of rebuilding. Through the Empowerment Zone, we set up a home ownership center because, as you can imagine, for people that are moving from subsidized housing to regular housing, they might not know all the skills, the credit, the home ownership, the insurance. And so we set up a process of educating them about the transition to regular housing, and it is working. We also have put a process into place for making certain that we have a home buyers assistance program. We had the first young man move back into Peoplestown, $8,000 down payment at no interest, who finally moved back into the community where he was born and raised. We have a program for elderly repairs that's now working. So I think what you can see is a rebirth. But we're not where we ought to be, but I can tell you we're a long way from where we were. Finally, let me talk about, as an appropriate metaphor, the challenges that we face with the infrastructure. You know, the infrastructure, it has been one of the most perplexing issues because from administrations all the way back, if you read a wonderful book called Where Peachtree Meets Sweet Auburn, it's the history of Atlanta told through the eyes of the Dobbs family, Maynard Jackson's family, and the Ivan Allen family. And they talk about the fact that they were urging Mayor Hartsfield to concentrate on the infrastructure, the wastewater system, way back in the 50s. Well, unfortunately, it was not given the proper attention by Mayor Hartsfield, Allen, Massell, Jackson, Young, Jackson, and most of it broke down on my watch. But we have confronted those challenges, and in fact, I was in office only 2 weeks when we put before the voters a bond referendum for infrastructure repair. And you may have forgotten that. That happened only 2 months into my administration. $150 million. The first time such a referendum has passed since 1968, when I was in grade school. We have used that $150 million to begin the process of repairing our infrastructure. From roads and bridges, some of you may know we replaced the Montgomery Ferry Bridge. But all over our city, our infrastructure is better. We've reduced the phosphorus level by 92%. We just opened up the Clear Creek Environmental Combined Sewer Overflow Facility in Piedmont Park, eliminating $10,000 a day in fines. Brought in under budget, and we saved $304,000 in fines, and within schedule. So we believe that we have a good story to tell. Let me close, because my friend has stood up, about using the airport as an appropriate metaphor. When I took office, the airport was in shambles, quite honestly, in 1994. You may remember that the year began with trial of corruption by the airport commissioner and by the city councilman and by the largest concessionaire. Our concessions were at the highest ever, and they were outlandishly priced. From then until now, we put $400 million into our airport. We've opened up a new international concourse, a new atrium. We put a new public art program in our airport. We threw the old concessionaires out. We brought new nationally recognized concessions in with a new pricing structure that has allowed them to not charge more than 10% over what they charge outside the airport. And we've cleansed the ethical stain that was so much a part of the operation of the airport then. So we believe that we've got a good story to tell. And by the way, we just got a $75 million grant to begin the process of building the 5th runway with our partnership with the Clinton Gore administration. So we believe that we have a very good record, and our vision for the future is to continue growing our economy. You would want to know, and I'll close by telling you that our population began declining in 1970. Last year, actually 1995, for the first time in 30 years, our population is finally increasing. Modestly, but finally increasing after 30 years of decline. So we believe that we're on the right road. You know, we've made some mistakes along the way. There is no Harvard School for mayors. You learn on the job. But we believe that we've done a very good job and we'll do even better in the future.
Marvin, we understand you have a story to share with us.
Thank you very much. I reminded of Dickens when he said we're living in the best of times and the worst of times. And of course, I see problems out of a different set of eyes in terms of where we're going. I love this city. Born and bred here, educated, Atlanta Public Schools, Clark Atlanta University, and Emory Law School. And got elected right out of Emory at age 27, and have seen this city grow from a segregated, as usual city to where we are today in terms of our accomplishments. Can we be a great city? I think, yes, we can be a great city. I was looking at Money Magazine some months ago, and we were rated 156 among urban cities. I was impressed with the fact that 3 of the cities in the state of Florida were ranked in the top 10. And I asked myself, how can Gainesville and the other 2 cities be ranked so high over and above the city of Atlanta? It's because the business community works together, come with elected officials and work together, and we try to make it better. Let me tell you what my vision is in terms of what we do. I remember when we were rated as having the worst zoo in America. I was chairman of the Stadium Authority, and we floated $13 million worth of bonds, and now it is rated as one of the finest zoos. But that came working with a private partnership and Terry Maples and others to make sure that we had the #1 zoo in the world. We still have not used the in and around neighborhood to enhance what we need to do in that particular community, and more work needs to be done because a natural link is a new turn of the field. So we need to work to make sure it goes. The other thing is we need to look at other cities and see what they are doing. In the city of Philadelphia last year, they had a parking authority that generated $50 million new dollars. And that is parking authority with 11 facilities. And what I would like to see happen is that we do apartments on the top, parking in the middle, and have it commercially based. We would then earn, within the 6th year, approximately $8 million, and we continue to move up so that we can make this a good city. But what we do, we earmark 25 cents out of every dollar to pay for salary increase for our law enforcement officers. I do not think that they are the highest paid at this particular point in time. The starting salary is $25,600. And in other cities, in particular around the state, around the country, people are being paid at the range of $35,000, $40,000, $45,000, and $50,000. And so our studies and our statistics show us that they are the lowest paid in the country. And when you talk to them, as I did and as I have over the years, they will tell you that they are paid at the lowest of the level. But we got to make sure that they're paid. Starting salary, $30,000 a year. With an AB degree, that's $25,000. With a master's degree, $35,000. Because the $25,000, once you take our state tax and federal taxes and other fringe benefits, that police officer getting home with around $14,500. And the cost of that, they're taking on second jobs and therefore not able to be at a full capacity performance in terms of what they are doing. I think that we need to create a new arts district. In the city of Philadelphia, they've just created an arts district in an old, abandoned, and blighted area. They've expanded to the 4 blocks, and that last year generated $10 million. So we have to work with the business community because arts and the cultural activity that we have, it helps you build a particular community, and it gives you a great appreciation in terms of what you are doing. Yes, there are 40 unencumbered acres to the south of City Hall. Why don't we build it? And they will come, get these young people together in these law offices and accounting firms and whatever, real estate, and say to them, not the overheads, if you are to come back downtown, tell me what type of facility that you want to live in. Do you want it to be row houses? Do you want to be single detached houses? Do you want some type of senior citizen? Do you want a daycare center? And let them be a part of the planning process. It is natural for them to do it because they'll be within a block of City Hall, 2 blocks of Fulton County government, 3 blocks of state government, and also within 4 blocks of the new Turner Arena. Let them design where they want to live and make sure. And ask some of the firms, in lieu of paying young lawyers $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, whatever it is, to take $10,000 of that money and have some type of housing stipend so people can move back into the city of Atlanta and make it work. When I go to Charlotte, I look at the regional cooperation where people are coming together, talking to each other. We too got to sit down and start talking on a regional basis. Our population, from the time that I came in office, declined from $500,000 to 390 or 410, whomever you listen to on a given day. But we, in fact, need to start doing that because otherwise we are not going to have the money and the finances to move forward as we do it in the past. What I say to you is that, and I'm trying to find my cards here as we talk, I want to show you why I am concerned about where we are and what we ought to be doing in this particular city. We are population decline of 15% since 1970, 32.6% residents live in poverty, property tax are 29% higher than comparable cities, millage rate $51.73 per thousand of the assessed value, school costs approximately $8,100, 30% higher than any comparable city, government administration per capita cost $1,841 per capita cost, 46% higher than any other comparable city. Cost of local government, 65% higher than any other comparable city. Number of paid employees, 46% higher than comparable cities. In a debate with John Sherman said 4,200. The mayor said 3,100. Take 3,100 times $21,000 and translate into $65 million. Payroll, debt outstanding, 68% higher than any comparable city. We're not even using competition. Some people say competition, I say privatization. This mayor of Indianapolis, a young man by the name of Stephen Goldsmith, called in his director of public works one day and said, tell me how much it costs to fix a pothole. And the young man said, Mr. Mayor, it's time for me to retire. I've been around here 30 years. No mayor has ever asked me that, and I don't know what you're talking about. He then called in 3 other vendors and said, give me a quote on how much to fix potholes, and tell a man they were able to give him a quote. The mayor did have a press conference and said, henceforth and forever, we're going to let out all contract, and we're going to create competition, and we're going to let the city employees, and we're going to let the unions also bid on it. They were able to save $240 million. The union won the first 6 out of 7 contracts, but what they soon found out, they didn't need 10 workers on the truck. They only need 2 or 3 workers. Competition is what we need in this particular city. Now, our chief executive officer signed a memorandum with the union that he would not privatize anything ex parte. It never came before the Atlanta City Council. A professor at Harvard University said he had never seen an agreement like that in all the days of his life. We're talking about how we turn it around. You do it like a corporate leader who comes in and a corporation is bleeding, and you're trying to make it a good corporation. So, but what do? We have paid $1.8 million in IRS fines within the last 12 months. We have not reconciled our checks books and our bank records in 3 years, so therefore you cannot have a balanced budget. We had an invitation to bid where the high bid was $16 million, the low bid was $9 million, and we gave it to the person who had submitted the $6 million. We purchased a luxury vehicle without competitive bids. We had Explorers, leather seats, moon roof, 10 CD players that we had at this particular time. I just read last night with some interest a book that I got yesterday. If you do not have this particular book, I invite your attention to it. It's called Election Issues 1997. It's issued by Research Atlanta, Inc. And I was reading in contemplation of this debate this morning, a presentation. I just want to turn to page 12, and these are not my figures. These are Dr. Bob Holmes. And start talking about improving management and reducing radical disparity, racial disparity. And he said the Commission of Administrative Service purchased over 1.5 million worth of cars through the non-competitive bid, not submitting a request for proposal for 2 years while continuing to pay a subcontract over $1 million on an expired air conditioning and heat maintenance contract. and refused to contract for almost 2 years to hire a firm to cap and monitor 3 city-operated landfills, resulting in state fines of $145,000 for non-compliance with a consent decree. There have been 3 or 4 chief financial officers. Some major issues involving the city include failure to appoint a permanent CFO more than 1 year after the resignation of the previous head, and appoint employees to position responsible for investing hundreds of millions of dollars who did not meet minimum requirement and did not have a high school education. 2 top mayoral aides ran up sale bills in excess of $1,000 per month. The Olympic vending contract with BG Swing Games Management was amended by the city to give BG Swing 75 more days to meet the claims arising from the vending contract, and a motion was made to add the city as a joint obligor on that particular contract. So all is not well, and I'm not here. I'm here to tell you that we have problems in this city. No, we have not done all that we can do, but we don't even stop to work with other entities to see what we're going to do. In fact, I'm telling you that 2.5 years ago, I tried to put the executive branch of government together with the chairman of the Fulton County Commissioner so we could talk about consolidation of services, and was told that they did not want to meet with the chairperson of the Fulton County Commission. I don't care whether he's Republican, whether or not he's black, whether or not he's Hispanic, whether or not he's Jewish. The common goal in this community is to represent people and to make sure. Let me tell you what we're not doing. We will go out and pay $37.5 million for a computer. The county goes out and pays $20 million, and collectively, both have been combined. They could have been purchased for $25 million. We're not even talking about consolidation of services of our police departments. Fulton County has 4 police departments. The city has 2 with the Atlanta Police and the Bureau of Corrections. And we cannot merge those services in a way that we ought to make sure that we start concentrating on the problem and stuff. We need to look at water, sewage, and all the other issues that we ought to be dealing with in terms of dealing with it. I've outlined some areas that we ought to be working in. Sewer and water, solid waste, pollution control, public safety, selective services. If city consolidation sewage, the saving of 50% more than the present budget, we could save in excess of $100 million working together. But don't worry about it, we're going to get busy now, because in the last Georgia General Assembly, I had the legislature drop a little bill that nobody noted that compels us now, contiguous jurisdiction, to come together and come up with consolidation of services, or by January 31st, 1998, all state funding will stop for city and county. We got to quit thinking in a small, focused capacity and start looking at the bigger picture. We need to be sitting down with our friends in Cobb County, and Gwinnett County, and other counties to make sure that we, in fact, are doing what we need to do to make sure that this continues to be one of the greatest cities in America. Thank you very much.
Well, on behalf of everybody here, wow, to both of you. It's nice to see people with IQ and with passion and with commitment, and I don't think anybody questions any of those motives with either of you, and thank you very much. With that said, what we would like to do is take some questions from the people that count, the voters in the room, and those people that have a food fight, but what we do want to have is a high IQ political discussion. What's my first question from the floor? Glenda Baker.
Mr. Arrington, you have addressed several problems that you see in the current office. Do you have a plan, a structured plan, a game plan that would rectify those problems? And to Mayor Campbell, hindsight is 20/20. You see the mistake.
I think we're at a point where we need a regional water board. People have a tendency of not finding themselves if they are included in the loop. Clearly, we have demonstrated that we need some help in that particular area. Work with Georgia Tech and some of these other colleges who specialize in it. I'm a sociology major, not a high-tech major, okay? But there are people around here and businessmen who will come to the table and work with us to make sure that we deal with those particular problems. I am not opposed to having a regional water board of appointees of people who got a rich background in this particular area. I do not want to appoint a layperson on an issue that is so technical and what have you, but to get people involved in that particular process. You asked me what I plan to do. I try to move that from first person singular to first person plural. What do we plan to do with the people investigating? I don't know of any politician, including the mayor and myself, who have all the answers to everything. But working jointly with people sitting around the table in terms of trying to make recommendations in terms of what we're doing, I think that is the way to approach it, and that would be the way that I would approach it, in fact.
Mr. Mayor,
Imagine that all these problems occurred only in the last 4 years and that he was unaware of any of these concerns, and that there could not have been these same collaborative solutions brought forward over the last 27. So let me talk specifically 1, 2, 3. With regard to the issues of our infrastructure problems have been bedeviling Atlanta for the last 20 years. They didn't start last year or the last 5 years. They have been problems for 50 years. The plant that caused the sewage spill 2 months ago was built in 1936. Now, even using the new math, it's hard to blame me for the construction or for the failure of that plant, but what we are doing is we're putting $330 million to tear that plant down and rebuild it. Now, the people in this room are in the business of real estate. You're in the business of growing the city of Atlanta. Well, you want our growth to continue while you also want us to replace this old antiquated infrastructure. And we've been doing that. Bridges, streets, roads, new plants. In essence, what has been asked of us is to change a flat tire while you're traveling 100 miles an hour, still going down the expressway. Because you want us to continue providing the water and the wastewater services while the growth continues. But we've got to replace the old system. So we are repairing and replacing pipe by pipe, line by line, facility by facility. We also are privatizing the water and wastewater systems. It is the largest privatization anywhere in the country that will occur. So would you say that we have made mistakes? Of course we have. When you have an employee base that we have, when you have the complex issues, there are some people that are going to make mistakes along the way, and we have meted out the appropriate discipline. We tried to make certain that we put new processes in place that will correct any problems for the future. But I would say that when you look at where we are, as an example, our water sewer rates. Our water and sewer rates today are the third lowest in the 17-county metro area. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have problems, but at the very least, we have made certain that we have addressed some of the problems. Taxes, as an example. When I took office, I said we would never raise property taxes. During the 4 years I've been in office, each year we have lowered the millage rate. Now, I want to explain this for a second. We have lowered the city of Atlanta's share of the millage rate from 11 mills to 6 mills. The reason that it's not properly reflected is because we only account for 25% of the property tax bill. 25% is Fulton County, over which we have no control. 50% is the Board of Education, over which we have no control. But for our share, we have been responsible stewards by cutting the millage rate from 11 mills to 6 mills. So what we have tried to do is to put into place quality service management, where we are addressing problems. We certainly have had some challenges along the way, but I would say that we have faced them directly, from infrastructure to crime to housing to taxes. On every issue, we have tried to bring forward collaborative solutions that I believe work.
what do you think, gang? What other hard questions do we have? Can you
Could
stand
you
up and
address-
ask your question?
Yes.
These are all your friends here.
Hi, I'm Linda New, and we appreciate y'all coming. But I would also like for both of you to address the Johnson's Ferry Road red light issue.
The Johnson Road red light issue. That's not the red district.
It's not within the province of the city of Atlanta. It's outside the city of Atlanta. It's in Fulton County. What I am pleased is finally that the Georgia Department of Transportation is asserting some control, as you would want. It is an area of great traffic and high traffic counts, but that is outside of the city limits of Atlanta, so we have no jurisdiction over it whatsoever.
I think that's where regional cooperation comes in. And you don't have to be directly affected to pick up the telephone to see whether or not engineers can get together and try to come up with some recommendation. The mayor conveniently say I've been on the council 27 years, but he's also been on that same body for 16 years. So just weigh the equities in terms of talking about that. And he said all of it did not occur on his particular watch. June 1996, worker error is blamed for an 800,000 gallon spill of raw sewage. fined $20,000. January 1997, city workers failed to remove the debris caused by dry weather, and resulting in that, $50,000. March 1997, broken equipment and a lack of monitoring caused a $1.7 million spill, fine $300,000. That all occurred within the Campbell's administration. You get a chance on Saturday to read the article which says, "Mucks runs them up on the Campbell watch," and it talks about what has happened during the last 3 or 4 years. So don't let him give all that garbage to Sam and Maynard and to Andy and to Ivanella, okay? Go back and read this article and see what has happened starting January 1997 as we move up. I am for regional cooperation in dealing with these particular problems. 25 years, 16 years.
It is a lot on Johnson's Ferry Road, but thank you, Rudy. Rudy Harrell has a question.
My question is, most of us have gone down to the city and tried to deal with the water department or the city zoning. My main question is why we cannot hire some people down there that seem to care.
Right.
And what I really dread is to have to send an out-of-towner down to the city. I mean, college graduates getting out of school, can't we hire some of these even at a lesser pay to start off? And,
for those of you that don't know, the person that asked the question, he's been the #1 real estate agent in Atlanta residential more than anybody else. So I'm sure that he's dealt with the city on numerous occasions. And how do we get the customer service and level up, gentlemen?
I think what you do is you make certain that you hire quality people, and that when people that you do hire don't function appropriately, then you get rid of them and replace them with other people. You try to put in place quality service improvements and make certain that it works. There is no person in here that has quite as many people to oversee as we do in the city of Atlanta. So it's hard to imagine that when you have over 7,000 employees, that everyone is going to work as you would want them to work. But what we've tried to do is to make certain that we have trained them, that we have talked about quality service improvements, and that we talked about customer service. And so what I would say is that if you find people that do not respond appropriately, that do not seem as though they care, you've got to notify us and let us know that they're there so that we can take the appropriate disciplinary action to remove them. It's one thing to say that they do not perform appropriately and quietly complaining to others. It's another to let us know, those of us who can do something about it. And that's what I would say is the ultimate solution, to let us know. Whenever I get a letter of complaint about a city worker or about a city problem, I call the person that writes or calls. And I talk to them and I try to get involved to make certain that we make the necessary improvements. But we can't do so if we don't know about the problem. What we've tried to do in the zoning department as an example, we're trying to bring the entire process under Commissioner Dobbins, under planning, who is a very capable man. We're trying to put a one-stop process in place, which I believe is beginning to work, but it still requires some massaging. So again, I certainly would not sit here and tell you that in a city with over 7,000 city workers that all of them are responding appropriately. But if we know, we can then react. That is the most appropriate way to do it. I don't know, however, if you're going to find college graduates who are willing to take lower pay just in order to serve. I think what you got to do is you got to find the best people for the job, pay them.
First of all, I go out and hire competent people and do background search on them. You don't have people popping up with an AV degree from West Point. And when you check the record, he graduated from West Point when he was 14 years of age. To hire somebody from Cobb County who had been discharged, and that was never brought to the council attention until I asked on the floor whether or not you ever been discharged. I looked at the human resource director, who is a fine lady, worked on the council with her by the name Benita Ransom. Does not know the first thing about human resources. And when I talked to her, her confirmation, I said to her, Benita, you've been misplaced. And she said, well, I can catch up in anywhere from 12 to 18 months. Well, that's a long time in dealing with, discriminatory practices, all the fair practices we got, and what have you. We need to go out and hire competent people. When you appoint people to the pension board who does not have a high school education and does not know the implication, And when you have an $800 million deficit in the pension plan, and it does not all happen on his watch, but when you have that, you try to put people who can help you to correct it, to make sure that it's going to work. You put together systems. We still now do not have the system in place. When UPS come out here today to bring that package, there's a little zip gun this guy got. He goes, zoop, and the information's in there. We have still got our law enforcement officers filling out 3 to 4 or 5 pages, and it's antiquated, and so they can't respond. I'm talking to one style. I'm just talking about if you look at it and evaluate and do an assessment on the manpower that you have, you can cure some of the problems. So you have to focus in on everything in City Hall. The other thing I would do just like Southern Bell, I would put an operator on that line, so every time your wife talked to me as a city employee, there would be a third party listening on that particular line. So if somebody go crazy and want to use some vulgarity,
so that's what, like, I know what you're talking about, the water department. If you go to any of those places, everybody's important. You're only as important to me as the job you get done. And I believe in going up to the next level, going to sector, till I get something done.
Well, I think you've shared your frustration.
Embarrassment during the Olympic Games when the 911 system broke and was broadcast across the world. What measures have been done to correct that 911 situation? And is it corrected now where if there's a community named Summer Park, they can find it without a specific address, or Olympic Park, somebody have the intelligence to know that that is in the heart of downtown Atlanta?
Well, what we did was we appointed a task force, a Blue Ribbon Commission, that came back with recommendations. We've hired more people, we've enhanced the training, we're paying the people, the operators more. We put in place a new matrix system to make certain that it's cross-referenced with all of the new real estate entries, so that every new entry is placed in the computer system immediately. We went back and remapped the entire system with an overlay to make certain that it worked. The 911 system is the best technology that's available, but even the best technology won't work if you have people that are inadequate that are manning it. What we found out was that the people that were working as operators were simply not the best trained. They were being paid, in essence, what you pay operators, telephone operators, as opposed to those that are, in essence, handling the most sensitive and delicate emergencies that we have. So we have revamped the system entirely. Still the best technology, but now having enhanced the training and the pay and the performance and the supervision of the 911 system. I would say that's why you've not had any additional problems since then, because we've taken the necessary steps to try to fix it. But on the other hand, still, whenever you have a system that relies on human beings, it's not going to be perfect.
Marvin, do you have any comments on the 911 issue?
yeah, we just got to get better. I got a call on Monday from Austin Boyd, who was at the mayor's house. The person who replaced him had a cardiac arrest, and it took almost 2 hours for 911 to respond to it. That's this week. And so we need more training. We need to put other people in place to make sure that it's responsive. That is a very, very important system. I am told that we are struggling to upgrade our people, the software, to get involved. Very, very close friend, and worked with one of the telecommunications companies, and he was the first one to bring this to my attention over 13 months ago in terms of what we ought to be doing. I think we're moving in the right direction. If we keep working hard, we ought to have it perfected within the next 90 to 180 days.
Herb Eustace in the back.
I have a question for both of y'all. I recently had a meeting in my office. It was a police officer, and he talked about youth gangs in Atlanta. And he had slides, and it was quite frightening. When
Talking about what, please?
Youth gangs.
Okay.
Youth gangs. And it was extremely frightening to a lot of us. Symbols he put up on the wall with different meanings. Would each one of y'all address that and how you would handle that if y'all were mayor?
You were frightened because of the gang aspect, not because they were younger than you, right?
Some years ago, Mayor Jackson put LaSalle Smith and others in control of this whole situation. It is a situation. You go in and around English Avenue in an area called the Bluff, there by English Avenue Elementary School, and you go out into Dixie Hill and Fair Street, in around some of those particular areas, kind of getting out of hand. I think what we need to do is have a special unit to deal with it and give them the manpower to make sure that it works. The second thing that I'm for is some type of resolution type concept where you put together a youth group and have students in high school to resolve their differences other than by violence. And also talk to them about the do's and the don'ts of not getting involved in crimes or what have you. I don't know if y'all seen this program on TV where they go to boot camp and people up in your face screaming and hollering at you and what have you. I think we need more of those to let people know what is going to happen. I have a daughter who is a junior at Howard University. When we carried up, there was a table called What Not to Do, and what establishment not to go to, what not to get involved in, and what happened. Now, sometimes this is going to slip through the hole. I don't mean that it's going to be perfect, okay? But if you know that a problem exists, you ought to get some people involved and get people like Jim Brown from Los Angeles, who has gone into those for a grant, and he's been able to get people to resolve their differences and come out of those particular situations and go on to become useful citizens.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to expand on that any?
Well, we have both of those things. We have a gang unit within the police department that has worked very effectively, and I assume that might have been the person that was doing the briefing for you, so we do have an anti-gang unit. We also have, as a collaborative with the other jurisdictions, Gangus, we have Project PAC, which is a grant from the Federal Justice Department that has brought together a collaboration of the City of Atlanta, Fulton County, DeKalb County, Gwinnett County, Cobb, and Clayton County in an effort to make certain that gang activity does not cross jurisdictional lines so that the criminals use the boundaries to somehow elude capture. And we have put into place a Gangus computer, G-A-N-G-I-S, which tracks the names and identities and the modus of operandi so that we're able to follow and track them. And in fact, it's been so successful, it's been the reason that we've been able to crack 4 or 5 very high-profile gang-related crimes over the last 2 or 3 years. We also have in place already a youth resolution group where we bring all of the presidents of student governments, vice presidents of student governments from the high schools, from colleges, and we have a student council, and we work in a collaborative way for conflict resolution. Now, one of the things, however, I must be candid with you, this is just like just say no to drugs. You can't put a sign up and say just say no and think the gang member is going to say, oh, okay, well, I guess I won't get involved in gang activity today because there's a sign on the door. You've got to get involved early. Some of the things that we've done with regard to our recreation programs are providing better mentoring and tutoring. We cannot assume that we have a large, poor population without adequate supervision, without 2-parent households, and then automatically imagine that they're not going to get into trouble. We've enhanced our truancy program. We put in place an enhanced truancy prevention program. Over the first 2 months, we picked up 1,500 students off the streets of Atlanta. So that shows that there's a problem. We also know between 12 p.m. and 3 p.m., more crimes are committed by young people. That means they're not in school. So it's sort of a multi-layered approach. You've got to make certain that you've got law enforcement. That's what we do with our gang. We've got to make certain we've got adequate mentoring and tutoring programs. We also work in the public school system to make certain we have after-school tutorial programs in our schools, keeping them open. We're working on a collaboration right now that we think will help to provide those recreation and tutoring programs after school in the schools themselves.
Both these gentlemen have other commitments, so we do want to wrap this up in the next 5 minutes. And Kara, you've had your hand up, and I hope I've said your name right because I can't see your name tag because my eyes are going on.
It's Carla Bristol, and I had a question about the Lennox Road widening project because that does affect us and resale the property there. I think short term it will affect property value because it's very scary about what's going to happen, but I'd like to know what your plan.
Absolutely. I met with a large group.
The question was Lennox Road widening.
I met with a large group of those who live along Lennox Road. The City of Atlanta, working in a collaboration, put forward a plan to the Department of Transportation for the widening of Lennox Road. The plan was neutered and so much concrete was added that it was unrecognizable from the plan that we submitted. And so I said to Commissioner Shepard that we would not allow that plan to be built. And the commitment then, the commitment now is that we will do everything possible to stop that plan from occurring and go back to our original plan. We have every indication that in fact that the Department of Transportation is going to accept our plan and is going to not utilize the original plan, and it's because of the partnerships that we form. So for those that live along Lennox or those that sell property along Lennox, you can be assured that we're not going to allow the DOT's plan for widening, but we'll go back to our original plan, which we think is much more environmentally sensitive and it protects the neighbors.
Let the record reflect that the mayor and I concur on that one particular position.
Marvin, I have a question on behalf of the group for both of you, but I'd like to direct it to Marvin first. It seems to me as though we focus on the inner city drug problem. And I don't think there's a person in this room that knows how to manufacture drugs. And most of us are lousy farmers. We wouldn't be good at growing it either. And it seems to me that every piece of drugs that gets into the inner city has to come from outside 285. That's right where we are here with 285 with those cars there. And it seems to me like we have a ring of 285 around the city, and for us to think the drugs aren't coming from every into this city from every road and through the Beltway, and drugs are getting into the inner city with the help of everybody in every part of the community is ridiculous. So my question is everybody from the President of the United States on down somehow on the take? How can we still have a drug problem? How can we not prevent this drug problem? How can that be?
I think I can speak for the mayor. This is, if he and I had the answer to that, we wouldn't have sitting in this morning. We'd be above the billionaire somewhere. That is a multi-problem. I do not think the president on the take, the vice president, the legislators. It is just a major problem which we have not been able to get a handle on. But we do work with county government, state government. I've seen the mayors and others talking to the United States attorney. And, they got special drug squads and what have you. It is a tough problem. And particularly if you're in and around water. I mean, coming from Savannah, I think State Highway Patrol, people are doing well. I saw the other night where they seized one of the largest cocaine busts in the history of Georgia and what have you. And we just have to continue to work. But we've also got to work with educators and parents. When a mama sees a son with 25 pairs of Nike tennis shoes in a closet, buying these starter jackets, that somewhere at home they need to start dealing with that particular problem. I saw years ago where a young man turned his dad in. He saw some marijuana, and somebody told him in school that day, "You see marijuana, call the police." I'm standing in my daddy's bedroom, and I see some marijuana. You know, daddy got locked up, got time, and everybody was upset. But somewhere we got to focus in on it, whether or not it's in Sunday school, whether or not it's in synagogues, churches, or what have you. Quite frankly, I don't have the answer, but I'm willing to commit my time to work with other jurisdictions and interested parties, including yourself, to try to find some solutions.
Mr. Mayor, do you have any magic for that challenge?
Well, one is self-responsibility. We ought to stop blaming everybody else. The drugs wouldn't come in if we weren't buying the drugs here. You know, we in this country blame everybody else around the world for our drug problem. We blame them for growing it. We blame them for bringing it in. We blame them for selling it. If there was no market, it would not exist. It is America's insatiable appetite for drugs that fuels the drug culture. And so let us look to ourselves. You know, part of the problem is this notion that we have that everybody else is responsible. You know, if you buy a hot cup of coffee and you spill it on yourself, then you sue McDonald's. It is just this abrogation of the basic sense of fundamental responsibility. It is us. You know, it's like that old cartoon. We've seen the enemy is us. We are responsible for the drug problem. You know, the peasant farmers in Colombia that are making a couple of dollars growing poppy plants are not the problem for our drug problem. If there were not people that sold it and bought it on the streets, there would be no drug culture. And so what I would say is we must work very hard for prevention, for education, for addiction cures. In Fulton County today, which is the largest county in Georgia, there is one drug treatment center on Ralph McGill and Boulevard. It houses about 130 people for a population of almost 600,000 people. And what that means is if you're employed and you've got a service provider that will pay for charter peach fruit, you can get help getting off of drugs. But if you're a regular person, you need that treatment, you can't get it. So we've got to look at a multi-layered approach. It's got to be law enforcement, it's got to be education, it's got to be drug treatment, but it's also got to be personal responsibility.
I would like to thank all of you in this room for coming. I'd like to thank both you two gentlemen for making this city as neat a city as it is, where you can wear a tie that has the name of your city on the tie. Could we have a big round of applause?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for the water too.
You bet.
Right. So we appoint a different social review board that's really become a holding disciplinary actions that are taken. These employees are not responsible. Oh, yeah.
You know, back Campbell. 172. Hey, thanks very much for coming. Thanks very much for coming.
Get you off the golf and get out of the way here.
Thanks very much for coming. How you doing? Thanks for coming. Hey, how you doing? How are things coming on? Okay. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks very much for having me. Thanks very much for having me.
I know.
George, work with your state.
There you go. Sure, absolutely. All right, let me fix myself up.
All right, 1, 2.
Thank you.